platform called HealthSpace, and that's where they track all their licenses and fees for the environmental health program. And Lane County has agreed to host that platform for all of the counties or any county that wants to participate. They've been working with the Oregon Health Authority to get this set up. So they are asking us, do you want to partner with us? Do you want to be part of this proposal? Which is an excellent idea. It's a great way to save money. The thing is, the agreement is written, it doesn't give exact fees of what it's going to cost. What it says is...
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah, what it says is you're going to pay, OHA is going to pay part, and then the county will pay a portion of their licenses, the fees that we collect for our licenses, a portion of that will go to pay for the software. I tried getting the exact number. I wasn't able to get the exact number. So I don't know if we want to, I hesitate to hold off knowing that we are moving forward with public health. However, I think what we could do is maybe just amend the order to say that the fees have to be approved by the board, something separate to that effect, just so we could move forward so they know that, yes, we are interested in this. We do want to do this, continue to work along and involve Curry in this process.
Commissioner Gold?
I'm going to have to agree with you because it's kind of hard to vote on anything unless you know what you're going to be paying for it. So I agree with what you said.
So you'd be in favor of amending the order to say the fees have to be approved separately and then proceed with it?
Commissioner Boyce?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I read this, the Oregon Health Authority is recommending this, and several other counties have been relatively happy with this service, and I think it gives us time to research with some of those counties. Also, I would like to contact Assessor Colon because of the GIS system on the assessor's assessment and taxation, the whole program there, that Lane County has developed that system as well. He may have some insight on the working relationship. We're getting to know the Lane County commissioners a little better, and so but I'm also in support of separating out the fees and understanding clearly what that is. But I think even to postpone today, and no, I don't want to postpone because if Oregon Health Authority, with a very good relationship that we're developing with those people, in my opinion, relating to public health and everything we're dealing with there, if they're making a recommendation and they're, I'm not saying they're watching, but yeah, I'm ready to vote. I'm ready to make a motion.
I have a couple more questions. I don't know the depth of are they going to do all of the health and human services? Do they do mental health? Does this software platform also do mental health side of it as well? Because from my understanding, it's not only public health for this county, this is the whole health and services that was given to CCH years ago that's going to be coming back. Is what I'm led to understand. So I'm just wondering, does the software also handle that as well?
I do not believe that it does. I believe it's just for that environmental health program.
Okay.
Do you know if CCH is presently using this software?
Yes, they are.
That was my next question.
Okay.
Commissioner Boyce?
Yeah, it's not that big of a program. I mean, we have, is it 300 restaurants?
I think about 400, but I can't remember off the top of my head.
So if this system, the amount of effort, savings, the program, I don't think it's going to be that significant. Is it worth the program and the effort, and is recognized and recommended by other counties? Yeah, we probably are pretty safe here, but it's not a huge program in the overall scheme of public health.
Did you have a motion then?
Sure, I'll move that we approve this contract with the amended, waiting on the amount of fees that it would cost us to do a secondary approval of that later. Okay. Correct?
I'll second that.
Further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold.
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Aye.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
Next is 8J, title, Limited English Proficiency Plan, Non-Discrimination Plans. Ms. Schmelzer?
Okay, so we've had a couple audits done this year, and we've found out that we're out of compliance in some areas. One is when you get federal dollars, you're supposed to have what they call a Title VI plan, and a limited English proficiency plan in place, which basically say you're not going to discriminate against people based on age, race, etc. And then you're also going to make sure that there are provisions for people that do not speak English to access your programs or understand your services. So we don't have that in place right now. We have something that's very outdated or was applicable to a specific program. We don't have anything general for the county. And it was something in the audits where they said you need to get this updated. So what this is the Title VI plan, which includes the limited English proficiency plan incorporated. And it's not, a lot of Title VI plans are very specific to transportation projects. This one is written such that it would apply to any, to all of our programs, basically, not just the transportation-related ones. So what I did was, council had found a good example out of Prineville, so I modeled it after that Prineville example. It's pretty self-explanatory. It's there's certain things we have to address. There's certain things we have to cover in the plan. So it goes through and it covers everything that we're required to do. With this, upon adoption of this, I will let some of those agencies know that we have gone ahead and adopted this. It's going to require some education with staff, making sure everyone's aware of what's included in here, all county staff. There's certain things we have to post on the board, some things we're going to have to take care of right away upon adoption, but it's pretty straightforward. I just encourage you to adopt it and get us compliant.
Commissioner Boyce?
Yeah, I'm ready to make a motion, and 16 pages, but to adopt this. This is kind of an updated plan, and kind of recognizing the responsibility we have here.
Yeah.
Okay?
Question?
I'll second it, and then just a little bit of discussion. Do we know when we're going to be doing the education part of this with the employees?
No, I don't, but it would be soon. What I would like to do is sit down and I'd like to have the opportunity to meet with all employees about some other stuff as well. For example, the strategic plan that we just adopted, the work plan, making sure everyone's on board with that. I'd like to talk to them about the wage study. So I would say within the next month or two.
Okay, good.
So you had a motion, Commissioner?
Yes. So moved.
We have a second, and further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold,
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Yes.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
All right, next we're going to move on to 8K, order proclaiming opposition to SB 1530, an act related to greenhouse gas emissions. So we're going to take public comment first on this, and then Commissioner Boyce, you can go on from there.
Thank you.
Tim Palmer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Tim Palmer, Port Orford, and I'm speaking here today on behalf of the Kalmiopsis Audubon Society, which has 400 members in Curry County. I'd like to start with a few words about why climate change is important to all of us and why we in rural Oregon stand to lose the most if this problem is not addressed. Because of it, forest fires are getting worse. Overwhelmingly, evidence shows that extreme fires that we now see are driven by higher temperatures, lower humidity, and intensified drought, winds, and lightning. Sea level is expected to rise 4 feet or more this century with extreme disruptions of property losses. The ocean's becoming acidic, threatening our entire commercial and sport fishing industries. Storms will intensify, causing tidal surges, coastline erosion, flooding, and disruption of roads, communications, and power. To ignore the climate problem represents a betrayal of responsibilities that every governing body must consider. Intensive work for 10 years led to SB 1530, the measure in front of you today. The best effort of economic analysts and elected officials, and a lot of compromises have been drawn in an effort to make the approach equitable to all. Our county industries and utilities will not be affected by the cap-and-trade quotas in this bill. To the contrary, the program will generate revenue to local needs for addressing wildfire risks and other local government measures to address the climate issue and the effects that it will cause. Other measures exempt or reimburse rural residents for costs to them and their business and this includes fuel credits to people of low and medium incomes. So why would the commissioners oppose this legislation? And what's your source of information in doing so? We might fear that gasoline prices would rise. However, according to state economic consultants, the program will result in a gas price increase of only 15 to 25 cents per gallon over the life of the program, according to a consultant. I have the source here in my statement. Note that with normal market fluctuations, gas prices have gone up $2.35 in a single year in the past decade. In the relatively stable year of 2016, they varied 70 cents, far more than what's expected with this bill. We pay more than a 25-cent difference depending on which brand of gas we buy at the pump today. If the commissioners take a position opposing this bill, I ask that you also urge the legislature to take alternative action to address the climate change problem. Our own Representative David Smith has introduced his own climate bill, which deserves support. In my statement, I include, I'll leave this with you when I'm done, I'll include a clip from today's paper that describes a state climate program even established in Utah. In any event, I encourage you to take the time to uncover the facts, be informed, and to take some responsibility for the consequences that climate change will bring to our communities and economy if corrective action is not taken. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Felicity? LaRose? Thank you.
Good
Thanks,
morning,
Janice.
Commissioners. Can you hear me? Which
Yes.
one are we using this one? Okay. I want to thank you so much for being here today to deal with the hard issues of climate change. We don't have an air wall around Curry County, and the state government, some of our participants there have been less than willing to step up to the plate. And so this bill that's before us now has some market advantages for us that I think we really do need to look at. And I'm going to also ask that we consider the idea of moving this discussion to at least a short workshop. I know you're going into the budgeting season, but even an hour's workshop, I think, would help us get more in depth into what you all have been willing to actually encounter and consider regarding climate change here. Alrighty. The SB 1530 actually puts us in a situation that has some unique advantages for Curry County. There are costs that could be passed on, as we mentioned, this low cost that could be passed on to deal with climate change issues through 1530. But Curry County actually has, sort of the catbird seat here. Not until 2028 will fuel suppliers delivering to Curry and Coos County and the cities of Bend and Klamath be phased into carbon reduction and possible increases in fuel prices. Of course, at that time, we don't know what fuel prices would be like due to the decrease in use of gasoline and fossil-based fuels and no-emission vehicles and so forth. We could have more of a glut of fuel on the market, so prices could actually even still be lesser when we are phased into the program. But given the fact that we're not going to see price increases where people in metro areas could see price increases, we're at the first crossing the border position, and we're in that, and we retain a price advantage for 8 years under this plan. Secondly, though we are concerned in Curry County about, of course, utilities and the cost of heating homes and so forth, we actually are not facing a problem with this under 1530A. Our electricity is almost totally generated by water, which is emissions free. So there are no greenhouse emissions, specifically carbon produced in generation. So our cost of electricity will not be increased by this legislation. And this is according to our electrical supplier, Coos Curry Electrical Cooperative. It states that the vast majority of our power is generated using water as a fuel, which means we have little or no carbon footprint. Generating electricity using water is emissions-free, renewable, and reliable. Now we go on to the cost to our manufacturing sector. In Curry County, again, we're in a uniquely advantageous position. We have a low carbon footprint businesses here. We don't actually have, I have not been able to find an industrial site generating more than 25 metric tons of carbon emissions per year, which is the level at which things will be regulated under this program. So we don't have a manufacturing sector that is at risk here. On the opposite side, however, we have a possibility of getting money from the state that's going to be going towards developing low carbon impact businesses, which is basically what we specialize in here. We have arts, we have tourism, we have elder care, we don't have that risk, and we again are in a unique position to get funding that will help us with our development, our further economic development. Okay, there is going to be a climate investment fund economic benefit. 1530 will start a climate investment fund. It's funded from the sale of allowances, what used to be called set-offs, to meet new emissions requirements for electricity, fossil fuel, and natural gas use. If we join, rather than opposing this program, we could gain economically. 25% of the fund will be spent on wildfire mitigation efforts, which we know we desperately need. We can't turn our back to the possibility of another Chetco wildfire. I as you were here to see the sky turn orange, and all of us being at a state of grave risk. So this will bring funds from the state to such purposes as forest and range fuels reduction through burning and thinning. It will increase the number of wage-paying forestry-related jobs located in our county, taking advantage of some of the unique skills that our local people have. We have jumpers here that they don't have anyplace else. So that we have people who have been displaced who now may be put back into gainful employment through some of this spending on climate change. Also, 25% of the fund will be dedicated to projects on working and natural lands through the Watershed Enhancement Board. Projects like this would include irrigation improvement, wetland improvement, and others, which again give us, because our fishers, people here have people with water experience. They could be employed in these programs. And lastly, 20% of the fund goes to local governments and state agencies for counties that opt into the provisions of the legislation. This will support disrupted industries, including agriculture, ranching, and tourism. Curry County's business strength is its diverse small businesses and its low carbon footprint situation. Also, there will be Office of Transportation funds that may help us with our countywide public transportation and other projects necessary. So, reduction of greenhouse gases is not a challenge that will vanish. We can't retreat to the coast, circle our wagons, and resist or ignore it, because we now, though, have a chance to increase our local advantages as a result of actually seriously considering this bill, and I hope we'll put it to a workshop format where we can continue to talk about our unique needs and opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask you just one question, LaRose? The question is, when are they going to be voting on this? Because if we're going to have a workshop, we would definitely have to do it before the vote.
It was tabled this morning. It was tabled.
Exactly, but it's going to
Okay.
the House for full consideration, and then we'll be coming back. But we are in short session, So
Okay.
it needs to come up pretty quick.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks.
But as I mentioned, even an hour to think about this together, I think would help us.
Kayla Felicity? Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Cal Felicity, and I'm speaking today on behalf of the Environmental Caucus of the Democratic Party of Oregon. We are a caucus which currently has 500 very active members all throughout the state. Had the privilege of being in Salem to observe some of the conversations around this bill as it's advanced through its many public hearings, and gave testimony there in a public hearing. Timber Unity was also present. As you know, Timber Unity is a voice against this bill, or has been, except that what happened was pretty much of a miracle. We saw Salem open their doors and say, come inside and chat. I would hope that this commission would do the same, that you will say to the citizens of this county, come inside and chat about how we might benefit from this bill, because, as LaRose pointed out, the economic advantages in this bill for Curry County are pretty amazing. And because we spoke up strongly, those of us in the environmental community, and said to those folks in the metropolitan areas, we are different from you. We have different needs. Our citizens have different businesses. We are different environmentally from you. We have a huge forested county here. We are really different. We are the first door into Highway 101 corridor, and the amount of benefit that could come to this county from that particular piece of the current legislation, which states that a truck stop within a certain distance from the border will not be subject to any regulation, to any increases in fuel cost. So I know places where the county runs truck stops in some states. You know, there are options to think about this in a positive way that will benefit us financially and benefit us also as a state, in a statewide effort to offer incentives to the heavy polluters to bring their pollution down. And that's what this bill is intended to do. It's not intended to punish us or to increase our prices. And you've been here a long time. You know that cap and trade, or cap and invest, is still under consideration as will it work or not. But we're at the point now that we need to try some things and see if they can be made to work. And this is the best effort on many minds, bipartisan effort, totally bipartisan effort for the last 10 years. It's been politicized beyond belief. We know that you're nonpartisan offices. You don't run on your parties. So we hope that you will listen to all your constituents about our concerns about Curry County stepping in to gain funds from this measure and keep our voices active. Also, the tabling, we don't expect it to come out of the House for at least a week. It has to go to Ways and Means before it's considered by the entire legislature, and that process may very well take us to the end of this short session. So we may actually be looking at talking about a bill we don't even know what the final, what it's going to look like for 2 or 3 more weeks, and then we may be voting on something that by next session may be still changed. So I urge you to wait on this.
Thank you. Commissioner Boyce?
Well, those are 3 excellent presentations. I've been following Southern Oregon Climate Action Now group, Ed Patterson, and certainly Bill Gorham, who's a marine biologist, and his biggest concern is with the ocean. And just being at the Port Orford board meeting last night, talking about, not revealing anything here, but they were talking about updating their flood insurance. You know, living on the road all my life, anything flood strictly was to the river, you know, on a river reference or rivers. And we had a flood last April, which is almost unheard of. Once in a while, in early March, but to have a flood in April, I mean, I've just never seen it in my 60-some years here. But to hear that the ocean can flood, you know, it kind of opened my eye. I haven't been ignorant of that possibility, but maybe I have been, you know, but just to have that realization and to try and learn more. You know, the short session, and one of you highlighted this, and I think that was good, wise, is for basically cleaning up bills and reestablishing committees and basically getting everybody together and looking what the priority should be for the odd year, which is, of course, is 5 to 7 month session. I heard one of you mention that there's a compromise to get a good program going here. Take climate change out of the discussion if you want, and just talk about carbon reduction or the carbon loss that we have and I'm so glad to hear anybody willing to bring up the fires and the risk that we have. People say, oh, here comes Boyce, again, he's going to talk about the fires, you bet, because the more I talk about it, the less odds go down. And so to hear the reminder that the state is aware of that through the Governor's Fire Response Council, certainly the Oregon Department of Forestry, right down to Oregon Department of Agriculture. I mean, the list is all of our 9 forest protective associations, and getting them the funding that they need to get the fires out and also one of you mentioned very wisely, and this relates to sod, is boots on the ground, getting that workforce built back up. And boy, I'll tell you, that is a major challenge. We have, between the state and federal, we have $2.1 million for the next budget on fighting sudden oak death, and yet we are struggling to find the people that we can train. That would be 4 months for fire protection, 4 months for lack of a better term, fuel removal. And so then we combine the state and the federal efforts, and it gives you a cause for a lot of hope. But the amount of fuel we have out there cannot be overstated. Back to the bill in its present form. I am really, first of all the rural counties are not supporting this bill as written. Very wise to remind the public that there have been some compromise bills recommended out there, but I've seen no evidence, and trying to rush this bill through the short session, whether it's a good bill or not, is not in the best interest of the citizens. It's dividing this state tremendously. And you know what happened last year when the Senate Republicans walked out and they felt like they had no choice. And thank you also for your reminder that this is a nonpartisan board here. If you take Curry County, let's take the visitor effort throughout Oregon, and the word gets out that you're going to be paying if you travel to Oregon. When we what was it, in March, late April of last year, maybe the first part of May, when we got Huskanodden open back up. And I was there because it was a proud time to see the work that had been done in an 11-day period, how effective that was. So I stood at the bottom end, and it was the first time that traffic was diverted over the dike, or what I call the Great Huskanodden Wall, from the detour at Carpenterville. The first 4 cars were out of state in May, early May. I'm sorry, it might have been April. I'm drawing a blank there, but it was an important time. This is the point. If the word gets out that you're going to be paying 10, 15, 20, 30 cents a gallon more to travel to Oregon, let's go to Idaho instead. That is a huge concern right there. I'm biased for Jerry's and mailboats. Some of those boats in 104 mile that take 40 people up to Blossom Bar and back will burn 110 gallons of gas. It could really hurt them and the employees that they have. I mean, the list that we're paying, I think you can verify this, in electricity, our county pays $225,000 a year for electricity. And so you can do the math. It's
about right.
Yeah.
County services, you mean?
Well, just
For government operations.
Right.
Just for the towers, the annex, the courthouse, the vets building in Brookings. I mean, the list it's a huge bill. So I got to look at what it's going to do to the farmers, ranchers, the timber operators, what it's going to do to the patrol deputies, and the whole basis of our meeting here has been, or a good portion of it anyway, has been, how are we going to come up with more funds, to address the surprise bills and expenditures that we've had dropped in our lap. And so that mileage is huge. I don't want to lose our visitor portion. Yeah, I'm asking the parties on both sides to look at a compromising bill so the counties, the 20 or so that are going to sign the opposition to the bill that I'm recommending to the board today, give us another year. I would certainly be open to a workshop. I have a lot to learn and would look forward to that. And again, your SOCAN people are very knowledgeable and would be a great benefit pulling the county together, pulling the citizens together, learn what we can. Everything's been discussed today. So I strongly oppose the bill 1530, Mr. Chair, as written, because I know the cost of the county is too great for us to bear, and not to mention what it'll do to many of our businesses and our employers, big and small. Thank you.
Commissioner Gold?
I'm going to say that I am not an expert on this, but I am certainly willing to listen to both sides of an issue, and I wouldn't mind having a workshop on this.
Well, I personally, I'm in favor of a workshop in it as well, but I will say that the way the bill is currently written, I am not in favor of the bill. I think that it needs to go back and be reworked. I think there's a lot of work that can be done on the bill, and I am hopeful that coming out of this short session that it will not make it through, and it will have to go back and be reworked in a nonpartisan way where people actually reach across the aisle. I think for rural Oregonians, there's a lot of damage going to be done. And I agree that tourism can be greatly affected with this bill the way it is currently written. There's a lot of things that have been slid into the bill later in the bill that I'm not in agreement as well, that I believe should be talked about. So with that, I am in full agreement that we can have a workshop on this.
Okay.
But as the bill is currently written, I am opposed to it. Commissioner Boyce?
Thank you again. This would give us an opportunity. Curry County can lead this program with the people that have spoke today. With we can pull in industry people, business folks, and whatever we come up with, if there is a compromise, a blended version of how to deal with carbon, the release of carbon into our atmosphere. And that's something we could propose first to other counties, propose to AOC, then propose to legislature for the long session. And I think it would be a great opportunity there. I'd love to participate in that. And again, learn and help everybody else gain as much information as they can.
Okay.
So we schedule a workshop.
Sure.
Did you have something? I'm sorry.
No, I will.
She would be doing the schedule.
I'll schedule it. I don't know the date offhand because I have to look at some of the other workshops we have lined
I
up.
think the next couple of workshops are pretty packed, so.
Right.
Yeah.
So I don't know the date offhand, but we'll put it in the paper.
Okay. So then as far as K goes, are you tabling your motion on that, or are you moving forward with the motion?
I want, as written right now, I make a motion that Curry County follow through with the resolution, proclamation, to oppose, as written, said in Bill 1530. I'd like a vote today, Mr. Chair.
Do I have a second? I will second that. Further discussion? Commissioner Gold?
I'm just going to have to say, without further information, I don't think I can vote on it today. So.
Further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold,
No.
Vice Chair Boyce,
Aye.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried 2-1.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Just encourage everybody, read the bill. Read the bill.
All right, we have 10 minutes left before our public hearing, so why don't we move forward with our director's report?
Okay.
Can you get it in 10 minutes, you think?
I will try. I have quite a bit, but I will try. First off, as the commissioners know, we did have an outbreak of shigellosis here in the county. We became aware of it last Wednesday, and there was a health alert network sent out to the health providers on Friday to be alert for signs of it so we could keep it under control. We actually have the outbreak in one of our smaller education environments right now. The provider, we do have a provider that does our communicable disease work. We do the governance on it. That provider did give us some outdated test kits last week. So the stool samples had to be redone. So Oregon Health Authority came down yesterday. They're working with our public health administrator, who met with the parents and, explained the process and what we need to do. So all of that is moving along. I have to tell you, I'm more than impressed with our new public health administrator. She has been here about 3 weeks, and it's been nothing but a fire after a fire, and she's been putting them out. She's done a great job. So we do have that issue that we're dealing with, and we'll stay on top of that. DEQ, we talked about the fact that the state no longer wants to run the private on-site waste disposal system for our county. They're trying to get out of it throughout the state. Coos County has opted to leave it with the state right now. They're one of the very few counties in the state that is not going to be running the program themselves. For us, there's a great benefit to running it ourselves. Right now, when somebody builds a home, it takes about 6 weeks to get the state down here to actually inspect or issue the permit for the sanitary system. By doing it in-house, we can get that down to a week, so we can really speed up the process, which is a great service, especially with our housing emergency declaration. We really want to make sure we're doing everything we can to speed up that process. We don't have enough permits, though, to have our own full-time person doing this. And I was looking at hiring a part-time person to do this, but my concern is you have to go through a lot of training and education. It's about 2 years worth to get you up to speed. And I'm concerned with a part-time person that after 2 years they're going to leave and we're just going to keep starting over. I did reach out to Josephine County, which is the closest county next to us that is going to be taking the program back in-house. And they are willing to help us with it. So we would just retain an admin fee, and then they would get the remainder of the fees. They actually would be training the people, paying the PERS on the people, buying the vehicle, paying for the gas, etc. So what you're going to see moving forward is an MOU come before you, or intergovernmental agreement, I guess is the right language, to have them run that program on our behalf. Third thing is animal control. We're having some real issues with animal control, who does what and what is expected of the county. Some people think we should be doing a little more than what we have the authority to do. There's also some concerns about fees, et cetera, associated with the animal control program and the associated elements of that. So we are going to be having a workshop on that to try and get everyone to the table to kind of hammer out so everyone understands the roles and responsibilities. So we're not being I guess, too much is being expected of us. And there's ordinances out there and codes out there which say what our roles are. So we just want to make sure that's very clear to everybody what those roles are.
You're talking about cities as well, right?
Cities as well, yeah. Fourth thing is our planning director is going to be taking a leave of absence for a little while. So DLCD has agreed to come down 1 day a week to help with some things, answer some questions. We may have to hire some temporary help in there. So I just want to give you an alert on that. And then 3 more things. We put out an RFP for this coming year, or for a new auditor, and we did have 2 responses to that. So that'll be coming to you. You're going to have to select one and then actually affirm that. And then we can budget for that. So that'll all be done in time for the budget meeting. Flores Lake transaction. We have to vacate some roads out there. I've been working on the petition, which actually starts that vacation process. Kind of had a little holdup. I'm trying to get some more information to get that through to you. I was hoping to have that to you today, but that'll probably be the next meeting. And from there, that order will direct the roadmaster to continue on with the vacation process.
I have a question on that.
Mm-hmm.
Will you please silence your phones in the audience, please? That was something that was unexpected that the county is going to have to now pay for, is this Flores Lake, the vacating of the roads?
Right. There's some expense involved. I believe council can answer this better than I can, but I believe those expenses can be borne by staff. They can be borne in-house.
Okay.
Well, If I could, right. So we talked about that during the agreement process, and we got a commitment from the state that they would help pay the cost not to exceed $3,000 of the vacation and the lot consolidation processes.
Okay.
So the last thing I have is we were supposed to approve our strategic plan today with our new firewall. I didn't get it until Friday, so I wasn't able to get it onto the agenda. So we'll just put that out for next week for approval.
Perfect. Is that it? It is 10:57, so we're going to take just 2 or 3 minutes, and then we're going to have a public hearing at 11 o'clock. Let everyone stretch for just a couple of minutes. All right. We are back in session. It is 11:02, February 19th, 2020. This is a public hearing. Resolution finalizing Curry County Head Start remodel project funded with CDBG, Community Development Block Grants funds from the Oregon Business Development Department. Council Huddle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And part of this says that the resolution has to be read in full, and I don't know if you want to read it in full or if you want me to read it in full, but I can just give a little background on this. We put notification in publications, the pilot and the reporter. We let people know that we're going to have a hearing today to obtain public comment related to the project and about the local government's performance on the project. Written comments were also welcome, and we let people know they had to be received by yesterday at 5 p.m. I'm not aware that we received any written comments. It said they'd go to contact John Jesuit. And then also, even though it all said Suite 123, which is the legal department, it said that the meeting room is ADA compliant, and if anybody wanted accommodations, to contact us for that as well. With that, either yourself or I can read the resolution, but as you know, this was to acquire, it was basically a $1.6 million grant that we got from Community Development Block Grant through the HUD project, which is administered by Business Oregon. We applied for the grant. It included a design element, an acquisition element, a construction element, and then a turnover element. And the design element was an architect. We ran into some problems. We got a different architect and got those problems fixed. Then we went to acquisition, where we worked with SWAC and acquired the building from them, and I think they were able to contribute. They basically took a write-off on some of the value to allow us to acquire that and keep meeting our project goals for construction. We did competitive bid. We had 2 bids, one from Adroit in Ashland and one from Austin and Grants Pass, both of whom are good. Adroit was a low bidder. They did a really good job, and they actually also, again, contributed over tens of thousands of dollars in, just work to the project. They did value engineering with our replacement architect, Stuart Woods, who also dedicated some in-kind contribution. We had Orca. They are the party who we will turn over the project to once it's completed. They contributed to the project to cover some surplus architect costs for the replacement architect, as well as some costs over the construction. And the city of Brookings even waived some fees, and of course the county put in just a lot of time and staff time and Board of Commissioners time on this. And we had a grand opening, a ribbon cutting last week. There was a picture in the paper where Commissioner Gold and Commissioner Boyce were each holding one part of the scissor to cut the ribbon, and it was pretty well attended. And I think from what the building looked like, the old SWAC library that had been kind of fit to handle some classrooms, to what it looks like now is night and day. Unfortunately, I don't have the pictures to show the board, but some of them were in the paper. But that's all I have for my report, unless the board has any comments or wants to hear anything from the public, if anyone's here to talk about it.
Well, if you wouldn't mind, Council, read the resolution.
Okay, so this is before the Board of Curry County Commissioners in and for the County of Curry, Oregon. A resolution finalizing the Curry County Head Start building remodel, funded with Community Development Block Grant funds from the Oregon Business Development Department. And this says, whereas Curry County received a Community Development Block Grant to remodel the building located at 420 Redwood Spur, Brookings, Oregon, 97444, known as the Brookings Head Start. And whereas it is estimated that the project has benefited at least 183 persons, and that's annually, of whom 94% are low to moderate income. And whereas a public hearing was held, and this is a resolution that will be adopted after the public hearing, was held by the Curry County Board of Commissioners at 11 a.m. Wednesday. This says February 15th. It's actually February 19th at the Commissioners' Hearing Room, Courthouse Annex, 94235 Moore Street, Gold Beach, Oregon. And then it says, and as advertised in the county newspapers of record, which we talked about that. And then whereas the purpose of the hearing is for the County Board of Commissioners to obtain citizens' views about the project and take comments about the local government's performance, and whereas the board has encouraged written and oral comments, whereas the location of the hearing was accessible to the disabled, and whereas information about the Oregon Community Development Block Grant Program and the project is available upon request for public review at 94235 Moore Street, Suite 123, Gold Beach, Oregon 97444, during regular office hours, and now therefore the Board of Curry County Commissioners hereby resolves to approve the closure and finalization of the Community Development Block Grant and announce the completion of the Curry County Brookings Head Start remodel project dated this 19th day of February 2020. And I was checking the notice. The notice did say February 19th. So we'll fix that date on the order. So that's all I have, Mr. Chair. I guess you could open the public hearing.
Commissioner Boyce, did you have something?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Council Huddle, I just want to extend gratitude to you. All your experience and legal background and professionalism, I didn't know you were going to be a project manager. And so to put on that hat, fill that role, and do it incredibly well. And the recap you just gave was, I think, perfect. To recognize all the people, the partners that joined in and worked really hard to keep this thing going. And you saw last week the wonderful result. And by the way, did you mention Goose Curry Douglas? I think you did.
I did not mention Tracy Loomis at CCD. I don't think I mentioned Mike Lehman by name at Orca. And also Biz Oregon, they also contributed. I think if you remember, at one point they added, I think, $3,000 from the surplus fund. But those folks were very accommodating, and they came down a couple of times to present to the board. So
you did mention Business Oregon,
yep.
And you mentioned Orca, but we have Mike Lehman in the audience, and thank you for remembering to mention him, yes. And one more was the City of Brookings. So anyway, thank you very much for that effort you put out.
You know, it was interesting to me at the open house, if I could, Mr. Chair, at the open house, I was not aware that Mayor Popoff is on the board. He's a Mayor Gold Beach here. He's on the board of Orca, so that was interesting to see him. And then Mayor Pieper showed up at the open house as well.
Popoff on the Oregon Coast Community Action.
That's
yes,
Orca.
Thank you.
So that was interesting. So
Commissioner Gold?
I'm just going to have to say that after going into that building, since it's being refurbished, what a difference in the smell, number one. And number two, I'm really glad that I changed my vote in favor of continuing this project. I really came into the room thinking I was going to vote no, but Mr. Lehman there convinced me that it was a good thing to do because they were willing to take care of all the overrides on the construction, et cetera. So I am really glad that we were able to see this through, and the kids will have a better place to be.
Well, I'd like to say thank you to everyone involved in this project and all your hard work on it and the sacrifices that were made. It was some. It'll be a great benefit to this county for years to come.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I know I hate to do this, but believe it or not, Julie Schmelzer deserves some credit. Her and Summer were involved in this project at the very get-go, and it's got to be kind of interesting for her to see this thing come to completion and when she was at the beginning of it.
First round with Curry County.
Way to
How
go.
long it's been.
All right, well, I have no comment cards filled out on this, so with that, do you have something else?
I was just going to make a motion.
With that, I
you
will
need a
close
public
the hearing.
Oh,
Oh,
I'm sorry.
I thought
Did
we
we
had
open
a-
the public hearing?
And I think Mr. Lehman.
I did open the hearing and read
Okay.
it.
I'm
So
sorry, Mr. Chair.
with that, I'm closing the hearing.
Nope.
Did you
Do
want
you want to make a comment, sir? I didn't have any cards, so.
Very quickly, Mike Lehman, Oregon Coast Community Action Director for the next couple of weeks anyway, and then I'll be retiring. I think the comments, I just want to say something, and since we're pretty much done with this process and put a bow on it, I don't want to miss for a moment the incredible contribution of Curry County. And I'm not here having to patronize you and make you sound good, but really, the two commissioners were there, and no disrespect, Borgia, you weren't there at the time, but the two that kept this project alive, John Huddle, Eric Hansen, the staff, and I mean, those are the numbers that don't show up anywhere that contributed to this project and made it work. We would not have this but for the efforts of Curry County, and recognize how important of economic development this is. A large percentage of the parents that have kids in this program are working. Without this program, they would not be working. So it's not just about early learning, it's about child care, and it's about preparing these kids for the next stages in their life. I can't thank you enough. Without Curry County, if I had a Yelp rating, you get 5 stars and great comments, great customer service, great results, and thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. All right, with that, I will close this hearing. Do we have a motion?
I move that we approve the resolution finalizing Curry County Head Start remodel project funded with CDBG.
It's a great day. Second that motion, Mr. Chair.
Further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold,
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce,
Aye.
Chair Pash,
Aye.
motion carried unanimously.
All right, next we have 7B.
Mike. Thanks, Mike. Excuse me.
Next we have 7B, absent property registration ordinance. Ms. Schmelzer, first we're going to take our public comments because this is a hearing, so this hearing is now open. David Barnes?
Commissioner?
Yes.
Before we do the public comment, can we just have the board perhaps make a motion to do this by title only instead of reading the entire document?
I move that we do it by title only.
Second, Mr. Chair.
Further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold,
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce,
Yes.
Chair Pash,
Aye.
motion carried unanimously.
All right, Mr. Barnes?
Yes,
Morning.
David Barnes. I've spoken about this before when it came up when it was introduced. I, again, want to voice my opposition to this. The reason I was in communication with Ms. Schmelzer and Mr. Huddle last week or the week before, and this matter is being brought up in the minimal legal way that it could be. By posting it in the local newspapers, and on the agenda on the county website. If there's 4,200 properties that the county has identified out there, there's 4,000 people who probably don't live in this county who don't know about this. As I've asked before, and I'll ask again now, last week, 2 weeks ago, you had the strategic plan came up. And the tenets of the strategic plan are that you want to reestablish trust in government, you want to be more transparent, you want to treat people with respect. Sneaking this in without giving people a chance who don't know about it to comment is just, to me, is just wrong. It would cost you far less to send a postcard to all the people on your list than you threw away last year on non-binding emergency advisory questions that you put on the ballot. And I just, if you really mean anything about being transparent and being respectful to the citizens, I'd ask you to pull this and to send people a postcard, letting them know that this is going to happen and giving them a chance to respond. My parents owned a second house for many years. They never had a say in all the taxes that got dumped onto them. And I just think it's wrong for you to do it when the cost of notifying people and giving them a chance to speak would be negligible compared to what you've been spending over the last few months. So thank you.
Thank you. Nancy Sue Rose? Good morning.
Good morning. Nancy Sue Rose. I live in Nasika Beach. First of all, public hearings, we still have to fill out a card at 9 a.m. to get to talk here. I got here at 9 to do that, but public hearings, do people who haven't filled out a card get to speak?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right.
Just so you know, everyone does know, our timer is broken, and again, we ask you to keep it to about 3 minutes. I'm kind of watching the clock, so if you see me go like this, please wrap up, okay? Thank you.
Okay. For my own self, as a renter, there are apartments and house rentals that have out-of-county owners, and they will most likely pass this fee on to the renters as soon as they can. And rentals here are very hard to find, ones that aren't hovels. 3 of the 4 that I have lived here in Gold Beach area have been hovels. But, you know, we take what we can find and what we can afford. So I want people to be aware of that too. I want the commissioners to be aware of that too. Then I am on some Facebook groups that people made comments, and this gentleman wrote something, and I said, well, I was going to the meeting. Did he want me to read it? His name is Jim Campman, and this is his post, or his comment. He says, this is bullshit. Well, next time I come to my home in Oregon, I will not shop and use the tourist attraction or patronize any restaurants or stores, and I will just go in and leave a note saying, see your county commissioner for the money I would have spent here today. I no longer will spend any money here because he thought it was a great idea to double tax me without representation for his own greedy ideology. I spend a few $1,000s every time I come to Oregon, and I support the local economy. But if this passes, that will all change, and you, the people of Curry County, will lose. So enjoy your Demrat commissioner's idea. I responded to him, but
I would ask you to edit any further comments.
Thank you.
And then I responded to him just briefly and asked him if he wanted me to read it, and he said that would be great because we come and have a lot of personal friends use our home there in Nesika Beach, and we recommend places to go. This will change if this passes. And they all spend a lot of money while there. This is just price gouging the people that come to enjoy your community and mine. So that was his comment. And then a couple of other people asked me to say that they agree with him, and that is Ray and Julie Myers. Thank you.
Thank you.
I did respond to him, but you weren't getting it.
Catherine Bryson? Sure, go ahead. Ms. Kennedy? Good morning.
Karen Kennedy, Gold Beach. I guess the first issue that I've had is that I've been told that there was data provided at the very beginning, but I wasn't here for the very first meeting, so I must have missed that information, that absentee owners are more of an issue than our Curry County residents. So I'd like to see that data so we can pass that on, because if it truly is an issue, then that does need to be dealt with. But if there's no more of an issue with absentee owner properties than there are with Curry County residents, then this is all for naught. I just want to be clear, so Sheriff Patrol deputies, it wouldn't expand their service at this point, it's just helping to pay for if they get a call to that area? Is that what? So there are no added services necessarily?
If I can comment.
Ms. Mills?
So during the public hearing, we take public comment. It's not meant to engage, but I can certainly answer those questions outside of the hearing.
That's fine. The added cost the county incurs, I would, as I mentioned in the last meeting, put that on the property owners by liening their property, or through code enforcement, through penalties through code enforcement. If there are issues with specific properties, that's how they should be dealt with. On your fees and penalties, you state that there's an appeal, $250 non-refundable appeal. I would want to make sure that they have a chance to tell you. We have a lot of, not snowbirds, but rainbirds that are here for 6 months of the year, and then they go to Arizona. When they're in Arizona is when our taxes roll out. So a lot of times their address is for Arizona, even though they are here for 6 months. Is there a way for them to let you guys know that without filing the $250 to appeal that? I'd like to see, well, I wouldn't like to see this at all, but if we're going to exempt timber companies that have sheriff patrols, why are we not exempting properties that have professional property management? Mobile home parks. So we have some parks in Harbor. Are you going to put those fees on the landowner, or is every homeowner in that park going to get the fee if they're not a resident? And if an absentee owner owns multiple properties in the area, are they having to register each property for whatever the fee is going to be, which is not established now? And then in the registration, you stated that a change of owner, that the owner would have to register within 90 days. Is that the old owner or the new owner? And I can tell you right now that when we sell a property in Rogue Hills, we have a hard time getting them to even switch to whatever in sanitary. So that's going to be a chore for you. At this point, I just want to formally request that you vote against this ordinance and not move it forward. I think there are way too many questions, and you can tell from the public, and if you've been on Facebook, which I know some of you are, you can see that there's a lack of public support for this. Thank you.
Ms. Bryson, were you wanting to go now? Okay. Sure. Thank you for asking.
Kathy, you might want to adjust that mic down a little bit too, that one on the right.
So I'm not going to read this. I will pass it around in there. I might send it in. It's not really my intent to assume that you folks can't read what I write. So I feel that this ordinance does not follow the rationale that is on the background sheet that is a part of the beginning, supposedly, of the process. I don't think that it follows other ordinances in other parts of the state. I think it misses the point. If I own a property that is a vacant land, as I do, I own the old Pistol River Store property. I would like to be able to register that property. If squatters are there, if people are dumping there, I'd like to be able to know that the county sheriff has my contact information so I can be informed. It's just erroneous to think that a tax roll is going to produce the list that you folks need of properties, because a property is a legal entity. And as I tried to explain or bring out last meeting, you can get a lot of tax bills for one legal entity. This is particularly true of timber companies, but it's also true if you have a manufactured home on a piece of land and they've not been combined as by detitling the manufactured home or filing a exempt from taxation form. So you're going to have just a mess, a real mess of trying to, and putting this burden onto the property owners to appeal is just a flat out, unfriendly to investment people that want to bring money into the county. The county's coffers are filled with tax dollars, and if you're turning away people, saying that your investment dollars don't mean anything to us because guess what, you live in Coos County or down in Crescent City. I would really like to have this ordinance scrapped and a voluntary ordinance that would apply also to county residents as well as non-county residents drawn up so that everybody can benefit from having proper policing of vacant vacant land or other properties that need monitoring. I'm happy to answer any questions if there's anything on here that is addressed. I think that as has already been pointed out, thinking that out-of-county owners are soft targets because they can't vote is not a very good political move on the part of the commissioners, in my opinion. So please consider scrapping this ordinance and coming up with an ordinance that really addresses what the background says it's trying to address. And I have sent this to the pilot and all the realtors in the county, and so I hope that you will really listen to your constituents. Thank you.
Thank you. Kim Shalick? Good morning.
Hello, good morning. My name is Kim Schlack. I'm one of those out-of-towner property owners. I've been paying property taxes in Curry County for almost 20 years now for the properties we've owned. I've looked at the stated purpose of this, and the stated purpose is to protect neighborhoods from blight, vandalism, and crimes. And that's well and good, but I don't see any data, and I was not here for the first meetings, but what is the data to show that the targeted population you're going after is going to be helpful in that stated purpose? Basically, you're not targeting the correct population. Have you put liens on these properties that, you say are being vandalized or the source of crimes or the blighted properties? That would be the first place to go. There's a lot of this just doesn't seem to have been thought out. First of all, is this going to apply to, if it applies to non-resident owned properties, are you talking about non-resident owned open land? What about non-resident owned businesses? Non-resident owned homes only? How's the fee going to be determined? Is it going to be based on the property value, in which case it's just another property tax? And my understanding is the commissioners can't impose another property tax. That would have to go to state legislatures. So, and is it going to be the same type of fee? What if you have an out-of-state owner who owns 10,000 acres? Are they going to have to pay the same fee as somebody who owns 1 acre? What about somebody who owns a $20 million house? Are they going to have to pay the same fee as somebody who owns a $250,000 house? Again, what if it's somebody who owns a business, who's out of town, doesn't occupy their business? So a lot of this just doesn't seem to have been thought out. How is this going to be enforced? Is it just going to be you're going to search records? And as a lot of people have pointed out, it's going to be very difficult to go through and do that. Again, it seems to me that this is targeting a specific subset of the population here, who, as others pointed out, aren't here to even hear about this and come and voice their protests about it. They can't vote. They can't vote for commissioners. They can't vote for the laws in this county. And honestly, they're not likely the cause of what the stated purpose of this is, which is to protect the county from blight and crimes. So, it's just not lost, I think, on a lot of people, and not lost on me, that of course the county has revenue problems, and you're going after a population who is not the source of the problem. You're just going after a population that you think is going to be a pushover. So thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else who would like to make a comment? Sir?
Hi, my name's Jim Green. I live on Morrison Lane in Harbor, and I'm a real estate agent with Century 21. Been doing this for a little over 3 years, and I've had some occasion to deal together with the county on a couple of properties over the last 3 years, and actually I was impressed with what the county did with those. I don't know if you remember, there was a pretty serious problem with some drug issues and squatters on Hamilton Lane some time ago, and it wasn't really anybody's fault necessarily that happened. The person who owned the property passed away. The heirs lived out of state and didn't really know there was a problem until a complaint started happening. But fortunately, with the help of your DA and the county sheriff, we were able to get the squatters off the property, and I was able to get permission from the owner to tear down a half-burnt down house where they were squatting, and we got it resolved. So that was pretty cool. We had another case right across the street from where I live on Ocean View Drive that's been a blight for years. And as a result of, I believe it, as a result of a complaint through the new code enforcement officer that you guys hired, communication happened with that property owner, and they've subsequently really cleaned up that property. It looks so much better, and the neighborhood all really appreciates that. And I don't know how, this stuff gets paid for. I know it costs you guys to do all this stuff, and I understand that, but it seems to me like I tend to agree that if there's costs where the county ends up going to clean up property using their own equipment and personnel, that a lien process would be appropriate if the owner isn't willing to clean up their property through their own efforts. A lien should be put against that property where you can eventually, at some point, get reimbursed for those costs. And I know that money is tight, and the sheriff's resources certainly are tight, and I think we all understand that. But I agree that it just doesn't seem like the right course of action to just arbitrarily decide that absentee owners should start paying a fee. So, thank you.
Thank you. Someone else here?
I'm Glenn Klein. So I'm one of those rain birds that Karen was talking about. So I live here about 6 months out of the year. Come and spend a lot of money. I've been here 10 years. I've had cameras in my house, and I have another, have my own system. Never had any issue in 10 years. Never had no sheriffs come out. It seems kind of wrong to put some of these expenses on somebody like me that enjoys Gold Beach, comes here 6 months of the year, and then heads out during rainy season. So that's it.
Thank you.
I'm Pat Piper. I'm a principal broker at Century 21 Agate and Brookings. I'm also the chair of the Chetco Community Public Library Board, so I'm aware that you guys need money and are trying to raise it. I agree with every single solitary thing that every person said here. One of the things that we do as real estate agents, try to get people interested in Curry County. Just to give you an example, I just recently sold a property on Hallway in Harbor that had 2 manufactured homes on it. The people who bought it are in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and had never seen it when they made the offer. They went by what we showed on the internet, and they finally did come down and look at it and bought it. They're planning on moving here in 2 years, so in the meantime, they're going to be renting the property out, and I'm excited about that because we really need rentals. These people would be discouraged if they thought that they had to pay extra fees just because they're out of town. I think if we're going to charge extra money, whether it's sales tax or property tax, it should be across the board so that everybody has their fair share, and we shouldn't be just picking on somebody that's not here to give input or defend themselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who has any public comment?
Hi, my name is David Griffiths. I'm out of Brookings. I'm an appraiser and broker. My office is up to South Bank, past where your big mess that you just cleaned up. That obviously, that's been going on for over 2 years, and you guys don't even keep track of your own properties. I feel the problem isn't with the property owners, it's with the transients and the people that give the transients all these tarps and tents and things that they just dispose and walk off and leave. If you guys would not encourage these people to stay, maybe we could get rid of them. It's not the property owners, it's the transients that are creating the problem.
Thank you. Anyone else with any further comments?
Good morning. My name is Guy Oliphant. I've lived in this county for 35 years. I just recently bought and moved to Smith River, 1 mile across the border, and I have rental property here. I talked to Mr. Posh on the phone earlier, and you indicated that it would be vacant properties only. I have not got to read the proposal at all, so I don't know the refinement of the whole deal. So if it's vacant property only, that's a different thing. But if it includes residents? You know, how, there's many questions. How's it going to be imposed? Is it per resident? If somebody owns a lot of property, these have been addressed already. Is it going to be per parcel, per unit? And it seems that the system seems to look on property owners as having an abundance of money. And in my situation, I'm sure a lot of others, that's on the contrary. You know, I've lived sparingly, being self-employed for 30 years, to create a retirement fund for myself, which is income properties. And this is just imposing another hardship on the whole situation, and in turn would raise rents, whatever this fee amount would be, which puts a hardship on renters, which is already absolutely terrible, which is contributing to the homeless situation in our community, I think. The other thing is, this is to go to law enforcement, I understand, solely. Would this provide for officers to patrol these properties in question more often, more readily, or they're already out there patrolling at the budget that they have already? And I'm not going to pretend to understand the enormity of your budget, but I do know that I have to live in my means to accomplish what I have done in life, and if I lived above those means, I'd be bankrupt already. So, you know, I try to create a good life for myself in this community, and unfortunately I moved to Smith River, so I'm not I can't vote here anymore. But I hate to see this happen if it is on residents and it passes along to the homeless situation that we have already. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mary Stansel, I live in Pistol River. I'm a realtor with Century 21 here in Gold Beach. I too agree with what everybody said, and I oppose this. I see a lot of blighted properties in our county, and the owners live here, much more than the long-distance owners. The properties that I am aware of that they pay caretakers, they live out of town, but their properties are checked on regularly, and they are not blighted, and they're paying a lot of taxes. They can't vote because they don't live here, and I just want to state that I am very opposed. It needs to be rethought, rewritten if it happens. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else, public comment? Okay, the public comment of this hearing is closed. Ms. Schmelzer?
Okay, so I guess I'll just go back and just try and answer some of the questions or comments that were given to us. So this process started back in, I think it was November, and we had, I think maybe 3 meetings on it, and then decided to send it back to a workshop. I think we brought it back to a meeting again, and then finally decided to schedule it for public hearing. So we've been working on it for a couple months, and what we did was we looked at models throughout Oregon and throughout the nation as to how people are addressing problem properties. And this is something that was very common that surfaced as to how communities are dealing with the issue. What we have seen is, we added a code enforcement arm to our governance structure, and that is, he's quite busy, so much that we added a second code enforcement person to deal with the problems that are being reported to us. Most of them are, I shouldn't say most, but a lot of them are squatters, junk on properties, junked cars, transients living there, etc. So realtors, as an example, like to sell clean properties. They don't like properties that have neighboring properties. We get complaints from realtors about properties. We get complaints from neighbors about properties. And so there's this demand on government to address these problem properties, yet our taxes have not gone up. So how do we pay for them? So we look at what other, like I said, what other areas do. And this is an ordinance that is common out there. They actually have it in the Valley, for example, is another area close by that does it. So it has been proposed, and like I said, we've been talking about it since November. Early on, we did talk about the data that was involved with it. We knew that, 16% of the sheriff's dispatch calls, I should say, and the follow-up work on that, 16% of that, I think it was related to people that do not live here. We looked at our code enforcement properties, and it was about 30% of those are for what I would call junk properties, and the people that don't live here. We have... And it applies not only on the vacant property, but it applies to houses where you're seeing squatters come in on properties. So we did discuss early on about a fee. The fee was $100 per property. And the comments throughout those meetings were that we should take the fee schedule out and discuss that separately. So that's why the fee is out of there, and people don't really know what the fee is. But it was discussed early on that it'd be $100. Then people said, well, maybe it should be a sliding scale. Originally, it applied to all properties where the owner was not here more than, we've changed it. I think it was like 9 months at one time, and it was changed to 6 months, and it was all based on the public comment that we had received. What we did do as a result at the last meeting, I think one of the big concerns was charging forested properties, because many of those people actually have contracts in place with the sheriff to patrol those properties already. So that was added. So we've been trying to tweak it based on the comments that we have been hearing. The difference between a private property or, why exempt somebody where the sheriff is patrolling it, why not exempt where the property manager is patrolling it, is we have control over the sheriff patrolling. We don't know what that private property or that property manager is doing with that property. So we can't go in and impose, just because somebody writes down that they have a property manager or accept it. We know when the sheriff is patrolling it, that he is actually out there patrolling it. We know what he's doing. We know how many times he's driving by the property. We know the rounds he is making on that property, so they are exempted. Notify everyone. There was comments about the appeal, the $250 appeal. If somebody will contact us and say, hey, you have the wrong address, that's not an appeal in our mind. That's just good governance. You contact us, we're going to make a change. Where it comes down to is if we say something, somebody is absolutely, there is no way I agree with that, I am going to appeal it, that is what an appeal is. So, if somebody just calls and says, can you change an address, or I'm sorry you have this incorrect, that's not an appeal. That's just correspondence. Like I said, the appeal would be as it's stated, if they're aggrieved by a decision. The question was, if you have multiple properties, does each property do you pay for each property, or is it by the owner? It is by the property. So as the ordinance defines it, it does define what property is. So if an owner has 5 properties, yes, they would pay 5 times then. If the new owner has 90 days, does it apply to the owner selling or the owner buying? Our codes always apply to the owner. They are responsible for the property. It's just like land use. If you rent to someone and the renter is causing a problem, you, the owner, is responsible. So it's the landowner that becomes responsible for what's happening on their property. How enforced? It is not just for law enforcement, it is for code enforcement as well. Like I said, about 30% of the cases right now are for this type of activity. Like I said, and you got to figure out a way to pay for it. So what we did was we looked at the portion of the sheriff's budget that is being spent on out-of-town problems, I would say. We looked at the portion of the code enforcement budget that is being spent on these properties and calculated what that cost was, and it ended up being about $100 a property for these vacant properties where the owner is absent. So that is how that was determined, how the fee, or originally how that fee was determined. And I think that was all the questions I had written down, or the comments I had. So the board at this point needs to decide whether they want to see some changes in it, or we move it forward to a second hearing to gather more input before they make a decision.
Public comments are closed, sir.
That means us as well.
No.
No?
No? Anyone?
Just listening to some of the comments here, I don't think it's refined enough yet. Karen Kennedy, I believe, brought up a number of questions I think need to be addressed before we push it forward.
I would ask that people, if they have questions or changes they want to see in the ordinance, they get them to me within the week, because I know that the copy we have now is, I think Karen was at a couple of our meetings, and when she would bring stuff up, we'd go back and we'd revise it. We'd try and address those concerns. So we have been trying to address the concerns for the last 5 months as we've been working through this process. So if there are some other ones, certainly let us know. I know there's also a lot of misinformation out there. I was getting a lot of calls from people opposing this, and it didn't even apply to them. It only applies in the unincorporated areas of the county. So certainly we do want to get this scheduled again. We want to keep moving along with it. We need to know whether or not we need to budget for this. So if anybody has other comments, please send them in writing to me at my email address within the next week, so we can finalize a final copy and get it back to the board.
One thing I could see that we might want to look at is if someone owns a property that has multiple tax lots on that property, like a farm, a ranch, they own 100 acres.
Sure.
And there's 3 tax lots on that property. They're still only on, they're only going to be on actually one property.
Yeah, so that was brought up early on, and we did address that. So originally it said it was based on the map tax lot, or on the tax bill. And based on the comments that we had, people said they didn't think that was fair, so they said it should be based on the property. So we did change it to property, and we did use the state definition of property to define what qualified as a property.
I do want to make a couple of comments to the public. You stated, sir, that the sheriff's department, you were wondering if the sheriff's department made more passes because of this money. Until a year ago, the sheriff's department didn't even have 24-hour service in Harbor anymore because we couldn't afford it. The county had been cut back so far on fees that we couldn't even fully fund our sheriff's department. Right now, the reason we have 24-hour services is because of a road fund. We're actually pilfering a road fund to pay for our sheriffs because this county cannot sustain itself. We can't raise property taxes because we've tried to and it doesn't pass. And even if we did raise our property taxes, the county only gets about 6% of that, which about 4.5% of it is admin fees. So another 1.5%, the county's not going to really gain any financial resources from that because of all the special districts in the county, which is another topic altogether. So, we have to look at ways to protect the citizens of this county. And as a commissioner, that's my number one thing to do in the county, is to protect the citizens of this county. We had an action take place in Brookings last week where we went in and cleaned out a homeless place that's been there, as stated, for years. And we are being much more proactive in moving those out. I personally moved one out 2 years ago through the help of some friends. We took, I think it was 8 dump truck loads of trash from that one facility itself at $700 a load.
12
loads?
I think
12 loads of
It's a lot of
garbage.
money.
$700 a load. So you can do the math on that. These are things that come out. The county has to pay for that. We have to. Can I have the floor, please? I appreciate it. So we have to figure out ways to pay for these things. And this is something that's basically 30 cents a day. You're talking about $8 a month for this service, or for this fee. I certainly don't see, for the amount of as far as what I read into this, the amount that will be gained if it's not your property. But would you want a property two doors down from your beautiful home that you have here to have people living on it that are trashing that property, or to have something happening on that property that could be handled through law enforcement, but because we don't have the funding for law enforcement, we can't really deal with it, because the sheriff's on 2 calls in North County. He doesn't have an officer that he could send to South County. These are all things that we're trying to slowly fixing this county, and we've all got to roll up our sleeves and pay a little bit for it. And if it costs, I own parcels in this county as well, and I live here full time, yes. But if I were an absentee owner, for 30 cents a day to help fund the law enforcement and the protective services through code enforcement to make sure that I don't have things happening on my property that I'm not there to see, for $8 a month, I think it is. I don't have a serious problem with that. And those are my personal comments. Anyone else have any further comments? So we direct staff, go ahead, I'm sorry, Commissioner.
That's okay, thank you. I'm really glad that you brought up what I call the southeast corner of the harbor program. It was just mentioned by one of the public testimony folks that we don't take care of our own property. Well, the process on that, in particular the legal process to do that in a fair way and deal with the homeless there, which we have a responsibility, a legal responsibility to do. You can argue, debate over what we should do with those folks, get rid of them. Not quite that simple. But we went through it. Well, and Mr. Green, thank you for bringing up a Hamilton property issue. We didn't have a code enforcement officer then. This is what we inherited. And the disease and the filth in that place, as you recall, it makes us realize or helps us focus just a little bit on our property values, why we live here. Our school enrollments are up right now a little bit in each of our communities. So this is what our kids could be exposed to down the road. So yes, whether it was 7 dump truck loads or 12, it costs the county $5,000. We've now, as you pointed out and reminded the public, yes, we have 2 code enforcement officers. I've fought hard on that because we can't deal with occupied or unoccupied properties, blight, everything that goes with that, drug addiction. We can't help law enforcement unless we do the legal process and move forward. And thank goodness we are. I appreciate the board and their efforts in saying this is what we want for Curry County. We're going to push back. Coos County does have a lien system, and that's been mentioned by a couple of folks here today. And I think there's some merit in that, at least with the commissioners I've been working with up there, how they can be reimbursed. But boy, it is a tough bit of duty to, as we learned at Hamilton, how long that process took. And one other property that was similar, my goodness, I remember Chief Brazil, Harbor Fire. I mean, he had to send his firefighters in there. I mean, it was hazardous. That's the best, I mean, that's the least offensive word that I could say publicly here. But there's a lot of those properties. It's growing in Curry County, and it's just not a homeless issue. It is a neglect issue, and it does bring other issues that we don't want in our community. And if I've got 20 things here that I can report on for this board, on my commissioner's report, this is just one of those 20 issues. So if people want to say, oh, you're just being a pushover on those people that don't live here, and you're just doing this because you want to vote, those people don't know me very well. Look at the other 19 issues I ask you. And so, not to get too, I get a little passionate about this, but we have one tough decision after another, and this may not be the perfect program, but we're trying. I appreciate the public comments and testimony very much, but we are working towards, we have a 59-cent tax base, 59 cents on $1,000, and that, I think this board's been pretty public that we have no intention of pushing any kind of property tax raise, but there may be other options that we need to consider, and I think this is a reasonable look at how can we make this happen, how can we keep, law enforcement, code enforcement is very expensive.
Can I make a comment?
One more thing I want to say, and I see our code enforcement officer, one of our code enforcement officers here, Mr. Portman, and I'll let you step up in a minute if you want to make a comment or not to this, but I don't want to go into the litany of things that you've dealt with in this county since you've been here, but we all complain about dogs and animals that, how do I get my neighbor's dog to be quiet, blah, 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 and he's called out 24 hours a day on these kind of things. I just want to bring one thing up. It was a property down in Brookings a few months ago, and a taxpayer in the county called me up and he said, there's a property down the road from me. The people don't live here, and it's a vacant property. And do you know that there's 4 mobile homes, there's 4 RV trailers on that property, and they're running generators, and they're literally got hoses coming out of their sewer lines, and they're dumping them in this field. Code enforcement went there and found that to be the exact case. These trailers were literally dumping their sewage and gray water into the field, and it was running down the hillside onto other people's properties and into a creek. It was dealt with, but these are the kind of things that we are, because of code enforcement, because of law enforcement, we're having to deal with. And to fund those things, again, everyone screams about property taxes and how will we pay our bills with 5.6 cents of every dollar we collect. But we've got to find a way to deal with it. And I know we're coming up against the lunch hour. Sir, did you want to make any comment on this? This is Mr. Fortman, who is our head code enforcement officer here in the county.
Good morning. I'm not going to speak about the money. What I'm going to speak about is just the other part of this ordinance that I support is the registration process and getting that information. There are three primary kinds of problems that I deal with every day in identifying who the real bad guys are here. Properties get in financial distress, people walk away from them. There's no record. The banks do not step up in this county because we don't have a registration process and say, this property's in foreclosure. They do not foreclose on it because they know there's a mess on it. They don't want to be responsible for it. So these properties get left alone. Every county, as Ms. Strauser has said, has had these kind of ordinances that we need to identify these kinds of properties. We have old families. We're an old community. We're a great community. And the families have moved out and left their properties to their children, to their grandchildren, or whatever. Some of them are able to take care of the properties and some aren't. And then when they do that, what I'm finding is the records aren't there. No one changes the properties. No one changes the registration of those properties, where to find the owners at. And we find that the dead owner has been dead for 5 years. We have properties where the owners have the same kind of situation, old-time families. There's a couple of mansions that I go to all the time here that the people have moved out, and our property tax is so low that the people are making their incomes in Portland and Seattle and all these other areas, and they're going, well, I'll just hang on to that property for 10 years till I'm ready to retire. And meanwhile, these houses are full of drugs, full of stolen property. The kids are breaking in it and drinking in them. And they're your next door neighbors. They're hidden in the trees next to you. And there's no way for us to know, without this registration process, who these properties belong to. We have properties here where squatters have moved onto the property, and I get a call from the realtors on one property. I'll just use an example where it's across from $1 million home. And they had a fire, they had all kinds of problems on the property, and we're trying to, the people that are living there are saying, we're living there with the owner's permission. We're their caretakers. And the owner traced them to Ohio, to the Philippines, to all over the world, and we still can't find this person. We can't confirm even that this person's still alive. And these people are living there with a civil agreement. And that ties our hands as to what we can do to get the people off these properties. So what I'm trying to speak to is the registration process is what I care about, is getting the information. So many of you spoke about how hard it is, our records are so poor to pull it. You're right. You're right. But we need this tool to be able to identify them. And I'm all for local managers. There's a lot of options to lower fees and all the other jazz. We just want people to take care of them. Ms. Mauser said, people who make the mess, like a lot of people, and I'll be done 1 minute, are the people who are living there. Well, the people who are living there, when I talk to them, their attitude is, not my problem. Go ahead, write me a ticket. I'm not going to pay it. The only recourse we have so many times is going after the property owners. And the biggest thing we have here is our records don't track them. The banks don't stand up for the properties that are in foreclosure or are at risk. And then when the banks finally do, and I track them down, then it's, oh, we can't find any talent in Curry County to clean up the property. We have to bring somebody from Portland or Medford and bring them in here. That's what this ordinance is about from my perspective, is giving us those tools to identify them and being able to share those tools with other emergency providers so that when the next big fire goes off, we know these are empty areas and these are where the people are. And sharing them with the county economic people to get these homes back into the inventory so we don't have such a housing shortage in this community. This is why I support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So what I'd like to say is, and I would like you all to do your own research, but this is something that's extremely common in a lot of communities and counties across the nation, and you can look into that yourself. Ms. Schmelzer has offered you all about a week to email her office with any suggestions or comments, changes that you'd like to make in this, and we'll look at them. Like I said, this isn't written in stone yet. This is why we're here having this hearing. So I think we would like to direct Ms. Schmelzer to, wait on that and get the comments and then bring it back.
Sure. I do just want to say one thing. Don't even suggest going the lien option unless you can find a way to fund that, because when you are looking at leaning that many properties, we're going to need legal people. So, there's some of the solutions that come up with result in a greater expense that we're going to have to figure out how to pay for. We have one county council totally tapped out right now. We have a court system totally tapped out right now. And we have boots on the ground for code enforcement. So we're going to have to figure out a way to have a code enforcement person doing all those liens, an attorney processing all that, and then getting that through the court system. So liens aren't always the best answer in a small county that doesn't have money. So if you're going to suggest that, please come up with a way to pay for that as well. Like I said, I'll take all those comments to the end of business next Wednesday.
All right, so at this time, we're going to adjourn this hearing, and we are going to break for lunch. We will be back at 1 o'clock.
With each other on some of their various problems. I went to the high school down in Brookings and had a tour through their welding facility, and they are presently getting an MOU with SWAC to bring that class going. I have also been asked to be on a committee that is working towards getting the last chance grade in California a permanent fix, and that definitely affects the commerce here in this area. And I also was part of a meeting for DEQ, and they're doing like a listening tour around the state talking about recycling. And I think I've already mentioned this once, but our county CTR has one of the lowest contamination rates. But they were talking about bringing a hammer down, and I was against that. I think people should do it voluntarily. They're also talking about giving transportation support to some of the rural communities that have to haul their recycled materials a further distance. I was for that. They're also talking about charging manufacturers of packing materials extra funds. And I had a little bit of a problem with that simply because they have all this money coming in and it's not always put where they say it's going to be put. So, and quite frankly, that's one of my concerns about the CO2 emissions stuff. They collect all this money and where does it go? So that's pretty much my report.
Okay. I believe I'm next this week. Yes, I am. I was, my comments are basically, I was very disappointed to see what happened with CASA, to see them pull the plug on the Curry County chapter here. The way it was done, I've got a letter here, as was noted this morning in our meeting, from Judge Margolis, and references different people, Judge Beeman and them, who have are disappointed in what's happened with this. The youth are the future of our nation, and to see this happen is very disappointing. I was glad to see the board this morning to come together to have an immediate workshop on this and hopefully move forward to bring this back to Curry. A couple other things. I am going to be moving forward, hopefully with this board's permission, down the road, but I'm going to be asking all the special districts in the county to give me an itemized tax return on their, or not tax return, but an itemized budget for their expenditures for this year, coming 2020-21, and one year back, 19 and 20. Right now, what gets recorded to the recorders to our clerk's office is just a generalized budget on what they spent on payroll, what they spent on this, that, and I would like to see an itemized edition of that so that we can see exactly where the dollars are being spent on payroll, on different service items. And then I am, again, hopefully going to down the road come back before the board with some more information on this and talk about it further. I'm preparing right now for the trip to Washington for NACO. We've got a full slate of things that we're going to be handling. There's some really good veterans housing issues that are coming up, some good legislation that is going to hopefully be pushed through with the power of rural counties, as well as, I guess, populated counties nationwide with NACO for veterans housing and also for veterans services. So I'm excited to see that. And as stated previously, I'll also be meeting with Department of the Interior and speaking with them, along with another day of meeting our state officials, talking about the Rogue River, the Chetco, and a lot of the sediment issues that we're having with the rock and the sediment in the rivers, the rising water temperatures, the shallower waters, and the tourism and economy that it has killed in our county. So that's all I have for this week.
Can you tell me, just a quick question, you mentioned Williams, and we talked about that last meeting, which very, very happy to hear. Your purpose of the meeting with him, probably more than one reason, I would.
Well, my purpose is in general just what we're facing here. Department of the Interior oversees not only the Corps of Engineers, but they also oversee a lot of things that happen for the structure of counties, rural and you know, the county roads, all that stuff. So Mr. Barnhart, who's the secretary, is like I said before, he's a nature lover. He's an avid fisherman. He likes to go to the greatest places in the world to fish and hunt. And like I spoke to the board before about, I'm going to invite him personally here to spend a few days here in our county and see what the issues, actually physically see what the issues are that we're dealing with, so that he is fully aware of what's actually happened to places like the old jet boats ramp over there that is gone, Alexis Landing that's about to disappear because it's going to be filled in with rock. Talk to the fishing guides about the loss of fishing in the Chetco and the Rogue River, and some of the the hatchery problems that we're having. That, we've got tributaries right now that could be developed into breeding grounds that aren't being, because the Corps has bailed on so many things. So these are things that I hope he'll not only have an ear for, but to actually come here and see with professionals, not a commissioner that is, being told a lot, but to sit with people like Steve Byerland and people that have lived here all of their lives and understand the actual fishing issues and the sediment issues of the river, and have them explain to them why and how it got that way, and perhaps a way out of it.
The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is a big one, and you might be in a good position to possibly impact there, because they are essentially on dead center on a lot of issues. So very good. And then, of course, the BLM, we still don't have a state director here. Bureau of Land Management, still worried about, whoop.
Oh, good. You're right.
Thanks. Just talking soft. Yes, thank you. That's good clarification and worth the time. You were done, weren't you? I'm sorry. Okay, I didn't know if maybe I interrupted you. Park Resources, this is a letter real quick from Stan Foster, who has not charged us anything yet, and I don't anticipate any bills anytime soon, but this just, the only reason I want to read this is so the board knows that he is moving forward. And quick note to the staff, Rocky Barros and Rosalind and Max at the Ford Family Foundation. We met there for an hour and a half that day. I want to thank you for the meeting time yesterday. It is always encouraging to work with the foundation. Yesterday was no exception. Then he goes in a little bit of detail. I'm waiting for him to give the board the community development block grant that we're applying for $40,000, which, as you recall, brings everything into focus with our different departments, the strategy, what are the resources, dealing with USDA. And then the other part of his letter was our next meeting that day with USDA, very positive, encouraging as well. And just to remind the board, we did come away with a little disappointment in that we had been told originally that there was a lot more money for the 9 counties than there actually was. But we still have our plans and our commitment to be competitive with the other 8 counties. So anyway, I just wanted you to know that he is very accessible, and too, just his background. He also, I forgot to mention earlier today in my Port Orford presentation, he helps them a great deal as well, and they seem to be giving him very high marks. Yeah, we're still moving a little slow, but we are definitely making progress. The different boards I serve on, real quick, Coos Curry Forest Protective Association. We had a meeting week before last, and just see how the fire chiefs get together and their people, very informative. The reason I want to bring them up today, though, is they are working with us to get the updated 2008 to 2020 Curry Wildfire Protection Plan. It basically is serviceable for what we have now, but without putting in the data from the 2 major fires we've had. That I was hoping to get that in our strategic plan, but Curry County's not the holdup on that. Emergency management. So, I have a good relationship. We have a good relationship there, but that's moving. I'm pushing just as hard as I can on that. The Forest Service Mission meetings we had last week, nothing really updated there beyond that, except that it was really good to hear today that people are aware of the fire fuel and that entire issue. And as we move forward, there's going to be a lot of funds. And maybe those even come from BLM. We're looking at the sources there and how to tie that in together. And certainly Timothy Williams could be very helpful on that. The Forest Service, I think, slowly but surely is agreeing that this is the target area. This is something that needs the greatest level of attention back to our CFLR grant, Collaborative Landscape Forest Restoration. Governor's Fire Response Council, that's coming up a lot in the legislature. It doesn't, we push as hard as we could over those months for a rural perspective, and especially the Eastern Oregon counties, along with the Southwestern Oregon counties, where we've had the historic fires that have made the biggest difference. So, not to be negative in any way, but just we did the best we could to get the best possible deal. The main thing is we want the Oregon Department of Forestry, i.e. all the Forest Protective Associations, get maximum funding. At one time that fee was around $200 million. Now realistically it's looking more like $60 million. Nonetheless, that's a lot of funds that they need, and that's for training additional workforce. And I could spend more time on that later, and hopefully I have something very positive to report on that. Wild Rivers Coast Forest Collaborative got a 3-hour meeting tomorrow, and that is back to working with Southern Oregon Forest Collaborative on this $40 million 10-year Southern Oregon grant. AOCC, I've got a 4-hour meeting Friday, and not going to be able to call in on that, but I think I need to be there anyway, so I think my schedule is going to permit me to get up there. Coos Curry Douglas Business Development, Summer Madison will be attending in Coos Bay tomorrow, which I'm very grateful for, and she has my voting proxy. Vets, I'll be at the Town Hall tonight in Brookings. That's from 5 to 7 at the new facility there on Railroad. And we're overdue for meetings, so I expect Keith Allen, the new director for our area, is going to be there, and I'm hearing very good things. He's not quite as outgoing as David Whitmer was, his predecessor, but I think he's working very hard. And then Chris Eiley, I spent an hour with her last week, and boy, she's just got an incredible heart. But she also is able to communicate some things that we're becoming more and more aware of. The Coos Curry Housing Task Force, housing is a continuing issue, and we're still waiting for AOC, Coos County, Wild Rivers Funding Group through Bandon Dunes. I think we're going to prevail on that within 30 days. I've got my fingers crossed. It is going to be a joint through Neighborhood Works Umpqua, housing coordinator for the two counties combined. And we had a meeting, it's been 2 weeks now, and maybe 3, and not much has happened since then, except we're trying to get all the funders together, which is United Way, Neighbor Works Umpqua, certainly the Wild Rivers Funding through Bandon Dunes. And so next is the Southern Ring Workers Investment Board, meeting yesterday for a couple hours here in Gold Beach. Maritime training, right down to log truck driving, training new log truck drivers. This organization is doing really well. They've had a little trouble reaching out to South Coast Lumber, but I think we can help close the gap there. And Summer and I spent a long meeting down there. It's been several months ago now, but we're just kind of building that bridge. And the demand for truck drivers and choker setters, and they just need the training, and they're able to provide some of that. Ocean, Oregon Coast Energy Alliance Network. We had a meeting last week, and a lot of people drive down from the Coos County area to the Gold Beach Library, and we had some really impressive people, including developers, on the phone listening to a 3-hour meeting. And I don't have specifics to give you right now, but I am going to have, as we went really comprehensively through our mission statement representing Coos and Curry County. Well, we're trying to include Lane County as well, and Douglas County at Reedsport, and I think we're going to make a little progress there, but it really is focused Coos and Curry County. Bandon winds to Thomas Creek Bridge between here and Brookings. But some really good work happening there. I'm still proceeding with caution, but you heard the discussion today related to Senate Bill 1530. Can we find legitimate renewable resource or energy resources? So, but I am optimistic on that, and I'll keep the board very well informed. As you know, on the 5th, we had our first suicide awareness and prevention meeting. We did change the name, by the way, to Awareness and Prevention, from Prevention and Awareness. The concept there is you need to be aware before you can help people. Mm-hmm. But the 15 or 16 people that introduced themselves that night, it was just a real privilege to be there. Most of them had stories related to families that they had lost, and there were some people that were not on the board that attended. So well attended, Mr. Chair, and our next meeting will be March 4th at the Curry Public Library. And needless to say, Gordon has just done an incredible job. Commissioner Gold, on a volunteer, I think that's just a great approach. I want the board maybe to consider at some point in time if we could consider from the county perspective or level a volunteer of the year or a volunteer of the month. We've got so many, it might be, I've already had 2 people say, hey, that person over there, nonstop, we should consider them for, and I remember 10 years ago, my mom got Gold Beach Volunteer of the Year, so I actually was able to gather a little bit of information on that. Southern Range Children's Foundation last week, we're just trying to raise funds, and that's really a good organization and starting to connect a little bit with the schools as well. And the last thing, Mr. Chair, thanks for bringing up CASA. I have spent a couple times on the phone with Director Gilmore, very nice lady, but I basically was able to say, hey, we have a lot of issues here. We're not going to let you take CASA. We're not going to let you mess with this system. And to see the support today and the volunteer show up and the risk of actually losing them and their enthusiasm and what that means to the kids. So thanks for bringing that up. And I don't have a report for you from Director Gilmore today. She is the #1 person in the state. I've not had a chance to talk to the Douglas County Commissioners, do a little research and say, hey, what is this organization? How can you help us? And I didn't think of reverting back to our own program, but I'm glad somebody brought that up. It might have been you, Commissioner Pash, but I think that's where we need to go. I hope that's the smartest direction, path. Thank you.
All right, thank you. At this time, we are going to recess this meeting and go into executive session per 192-6602H to consult with legal counsel concerning the legal rights and duties of a public body with regard to litigation or litigation likely to be filed. This meeting is in recess, and we will come out of that meeting and back into this meeting. Yes, Counsel?
Could we also add to that, Mr. Chair, 192-6602D, labor negotiations? We have received some correspondence that I just wanted to present to the board.
Thank you. We shall.
Thank you.